Thanks for still being with us. And I will be the last talk before Vitaly's talk. So I will just quickly go through basically the recent research at AltLayer we've done, and also some of the results and the thoughts we put for the past 2 years. And as you can see from the title, right? Like on our side, we're basically building this real-estate rollup as previously Amrit and Dorsey and a bunch of the other people shared. And at the same time, as you know, right now with Justin Drake, and later he will also join us, mention about this based rollup. So today I really would like to address some of the challenges and basically some issues around like these kind of conversations and discussions around this real-estate versus based. So in the end, probably you will see, okay, it's the same, a little bit different, but still probably in the end, they are the same thing. As we can see from the recent Twitter, and basically, there are a bunch of debates and discussions, right? So, for example, there are so many rollups, and sometimes we call it real-estate rollup by leveraging Eigen or some other risk-taking platforms for faster finality and also some other features like decentralized sequencing. On the other side, we also have this based rollup, basically leverage this kind of proposer of Ethereum to do this kind of pre-confirmation, and sometimes like later can also do the sequencing and the execution. And there's a lot of debates like, for example, can we use the real-estate rollup or real-estate features to achieve the same thing based rollup want to have? Or sometimes people feel like, okay, if we have the based rollup, but due to various reasons, if we need to wait for the finality of Ethereum, so it probably take a few minutes. So in that case, it basically defeats the purpose of L2, which we can have sub-second pre-confirmation itself. And at the same time, as you can see, right, as I just mentioned, so there are so many like sort of discussions on the real-estate rollup and also based rollup. And sometimes people just feel like, do we really need a new category of these rollups compared to the native rollup? Either we are using like sort of OP stack, Arbitrum Orbit, or Polygon CDK and ZK Sync, this kind of ZK rollup. And we don't have a lot of clarity on this stuff. And but at the same time, as we all know, right, since for the past 2 years, we already have so many rollup as service providers. And right now, if you want to deploy rollup, probably it's much easier than deploying a smart contract. For example, via AltLayer or some other providers, by click a bunch of buttons, you can quickly launch a rollup within a few minutes. And roughly by the end of this year, we probably have over 1,000 rollups, either for general purpose or for some application specific, like gaming, social, DeFi, DePIN, and AI. And at the same time, we all have the sort of the same set of issues for all the existing rollup stacks. That's why we want to have this real-estate rollup and based rollup to basically address these issues. And the biggest one will be like, okay, the sequencer is still very centralized. For all the rollup stack, it's a single sequencer, no matter it's OP, Arbitrum, or Base, or this Polygon, ZK EVM, and ZK Sync. And at the same time, as you can see, right, the finality also an issue. Even we don't count this 7-day challenge period for this optimistic rollup and also a few hours proof generation for the ZK rollup, right? We still have a few minutes for the sort of roll up the sequencer or the batcher to post the zero hash or DA to the L1. So in that case, as you can see, right, we still need to rely on the finality of L1. So there are a bunch of issues here, and to be honest, we are trying to leverage restaking and also this base rollup to address these issues. And as you can see, right, we sort of can really use these restate features and also all based solutions to address these kind of issues. One is like sequencing, the other pre-confirmation, and then this atomic inclusion execution. And the last one is sort of this liquidity fragmentation mitigation. A little bit introduction for the restate rollup. So basically, on our side, working together with Eigen, we created 3 AVSs together, one for sort of a decentralized sequencing called SCORD, another one called decentralized verification, Vital, and on top of that, we also have MARC for fast finality. So in that case, like we can leverage this kind of framework to address the issues as I just mentioned, right? And it's not just testnet or POC. We already launched a bunch of these restage rollups, probably you see from the previous panel, and they're already in the action. So you can really do not just single staking of the Ether for the shared security, but you can also stake some various different tokens into the platform to secure the rollup by providing these staked Ether and also enabling this decentralized verification, sequencing, and fast finality. And as you can see, right, in different categories, gaming, social, DeFi, and we just launched another one for Deepin. And the shared security level is quite high. It's typical over 1 billion. And we have over 40 operators just for more decentralization for some of the features. And regarding this base rollup, right, we also have this rough overview. As you can see, compared to restage rollup, we need to engage with a group of operators to do this sequencing, verification, and fast finality. For base rollup, we natively use these proposers or validator of Ethereum to do this kind of sequencing execution. And roughly, as you can see, right, Robert really gave a great talk on the Flashbot side. So as you can see, we have a lot of these combinations of the L2 sequencing and also L1's block bundling. So in that case, you can treat it as when L2 wants to propose or pose some sort of blocks, it basically needs the consent of L1 proposers or Ethereum proposers and validators to include these blocks first. And roughly we know, like, so for rollups, right, it's not just about sequencing, they're also execution. And we can briefly split into the sequencer and also executor, which will be used later. And if we really want to compare the base rollup and also restage rollup, we typically into these three categories. Okay, for sequencing, as we all know, as I just showed you, right, for restage rollup, basically, we use a group of nodes as sort of a decentralized network to quickly do the sequencing of different transactions for the L2. And after that, as you can see, right, it's not like a full consensus protocol, but at the same time, you can aggregate signature to make sure like we can quickly like sort of sequence the blocks and produce blocks for the executor to do the execution. So in that case, we can still achieve sub-second, like sort of this pre-confirmation for it. But on the base rollup side, it's a little bit complicated because it's no longer just about the L2 sequencer or the L2 node. It also relies on the L1 proposer side. That's why if you look at this diagram, right? So when the L2 collect these blocks, or sometimes we can even leverage the L1 proposer to collect these blocks. And then we need to wait for roughly the finality on the Ethereum to make sure like, okay, these blocks or the transactions on L2, we want to basically process later on. So that's why if you look at one of the real world example Tackle, when you deposit or you send transactions on Tackle, you typically need to wait for the confirmation of the L1 proposer. And they're both the pros and cons, right? For restage rollup, as you can see, right? We typically just engage with a group of nodes, but for the base stage rollup, we can directly leverage the Ethereum existing proposers and validators. And beyond that, it also derives sometimes about this latency on the Ethereum side. So that's why, as we can see, if we really want to approach to this base stage rollup, right, we need a much better pre-confirmation for either base stage rollup and also for the restage rollup. And this is sort of like a very new concept. If you look at these blog posts and also tweets, it was extensively discussed for the past few months. And a few days ago in the sequencing day, we saw there a bunch of like sort of discussions, in-person discussion on it. And that basically the MC asked the question, who really understands this pre-confirmation in depth? So the whole room, 200 people, no one really raised their hand. So, but as you can see, right, it becomes like a hot topic because we want to have this based rollup or some of the security or feature derived from this Ethereum natively, instead of just we have a bunch of nodes on the L2 side. If we look at the current finality of Ethereum, we know that every block is 12 seconds, but beyond that, we know if we really want to confirm or finalize a block or transaction, we have to wait for 2 epochs, and basically consists a bunch of these blocks, and typically it lasts for around this 30 minutes, or basically, as you can see from this diagram, right? So in that case, as I just mentioned, right, if we really want the L1 Ethereum to sequence the blocks on the L2, if we really want to have the final finality, so in that case, like for each transaction, the best case on the L2, you have to wait for like sort of 30 minutes to get finality on Ethereum. So that's why we need a better way to do this pre-confirmation before these kind of blocks on the L2 really finalize on the L1. We need to find another way to do the pre-confirmation to really reduce the latency into 2 seconds or even sub-second. And in that case, right, as you can see on our side, we are trying to build something leveraging this kind of restaking platform like AltLayer, still group a bunch of nodes, and then we sort of pre-order these transactions, and in that case, we can sort of like give more confidence to the sequencers on the L2. So in that case, it's sort of like pre-confirmation, like sort of gateway, but in a more decentralized manner. Another way, as the native-based pre-confirmation will be like, as I just mentioned, right? You can have pre-confirmation gateway, collect all the transactions, and this pre-confirmation gateway can be run in the TEE, as Robert mentioned. So in that case, we make sure, okay, we get the promise from this gateway, but later, definitely, these things should be executed like in the L1 after a few minutes. So in that case, as you can see, right, this pre-confirmation gateway, along with these kind of proposers, they need to make sure, okay, we send some L2 transaction to you guys. Within sub-second, we can get the confirmation from you. It's relatively centralized, but at the same time, it's very fast. But once you give the promise, later you should really send the transaction to Ethereum and make sure all these blocks or some of the transaction you just promised to be included into Ethereum should be processed. So in that case, as you can see, right, we call it a pre-confirmation because based on some trust assumption that, okay, the gateway and also the proposer need to fulfill the promise they gave to this L2 sort of a node that, okay, this transaction will be included in the upcoming sort of blocks. And as I just mentioned, right, the native one probably relatively centralized because it relies on like sort of TE at the same time. To achieve this sub-second like sort of pre-confirmation, you really need a relatively centralized network. But at the same time, I just mentioned, right, as Restake rollup, we can also achieve this feature by leveraging Eigen and have a group of nodes. All of them can basically run the same setup, just make it relatively decentralized. So in that case, as I mentioned, right, okay, if we really want to have this native basic rollup, that's definitely fine. But at this stage, probably it's relatively centralized. But if we want to make it relatively decentralized, then we need to have some sort of POS network. And for the POS network, we can definitely leverage AltLayer to basically share the Ether security to secure it with a bunch of operators to run it. And another thing typically we ignore in the conversations and discussions around this based rollup and restage rollup is about composability. Because one of the benefits we can achieve from this based rollup is really about this composability. Basically, if we can really leverage the L1's validator or proposer to do this kind of sequencing, so in that case, it can really see the big pictures of different rollups. For example, all the upcoming transactions for different rollups and L2s. In that case, you can basically do some interoperabilities across the different rollups. But the current stage, as you can see, right, we still need a bunch of these, like I just mentioned, this sequencer. Either we use L1 validator or proposer, or we use a bunch of these operators. Even we have pre-confirmation, but as I just mentioned, right, it's a promise of inclusion of your transactions. It doesn't really execute the transaction. So once you have all the transactions in the list to be included into Ethereum, but after that, you still need to execute these transactions by the sequencer. So in that case, as you can see, right, they are not equivalent. So if we really want this atomic composability among different rollups via this based rollup, we need the inclusion. At the same time, we also need to have the guarantee of the execution across different sequencers on different rollups. Otherwise, if we say, okay, we include this transaction on rollup A, that transaction on rollup B, for example, a unit swap, right? But the transaction on A is successful. Transaction B is sort of transaction B on rollup B not successful. In that case, the swap actually couldn't be finished. So that's why we should really ensure not just the inclusion, but also the execution. And the cool thing, as I just mentioned, right, there's a bunch of ways right now we are trying to figure out like how we really achieve it. Pre-confirmation, shared sequencing, after that, how about this atomicity across for the transactions across different rollups? So one way, like my friend like Barnabe, they just posted this ePBS and they just try to solve of the centralization of the current proposer builder like sort of issues. But at the same time, we can figure out like there's some potential ways in the future, not just like we can achieve the pre-confirmation for the inclusion atomicity, but also for the execution. One way, as I just mentioned, right, we can still group a bunch of nodes and to really read these or include these transactions on one. But at the same time, the group of nodes can also be the sequencer on different L2s to do this fast execution. And beyond that, we can have another group of nodes to do this extra verification. So in that case, if we really want to have the final like sort of and fast finality, in that case, right, we can trust the last group of nodes do the extra verification after the execution. So in that case, as you can see, right, we can achieve both atomic inclusion and also this atomic execution and verification. And the same thing, right? If we want to build something with a single node, then it's fun. But if we want to build something with a network of nodes or operator, in that case, we really need a proof-of-stake network. So one way that we can leverage the existing risk-taking platform, then we don't need to introduce any extra ERC20 tokens. But at the same time, if we want to have some native and Ethereum alignment, then we can definitely leverage like sort of the existing shared security and also risk-taking platform to engage a bunch of operators and via this sort of risk-taking platform and use the Ether to ensure the security and also the slashing mechanism for the group of nodes. So that's why in the end, as I just showed you at the beginning, right? Even there's some difference between risk-taking rollup and also this based rollup, but in the end, if we really want to have some decentralization for the group of nodes, in that case, we need to engage with some POS network or some risk-taking mechanism. So that's why I say it's same, a little bit different between these two categories of new rollups. But at the same time, if we really want to engage with some decentralization, in the end, it's still a group, it's basically a POS network. Yeah, I really enjoyed the discussion, debates with a bunch of researchers. And if audience really want to have and look for more this kind of interesting research, feel free to reach out to us. And we are always glad to provide both risk rollup and also basic rollup. Thank you, everyone. Let's wait for Vitaly.